Puis-je vous aider, monsieur? The most universal language is still human dignity.
Before we begin, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. I'm really hoping to break through the magical barrier of 1,000 subscribers. That number holds a special significance for me. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but for me, it's a huge boost of motivation to create my next video. Thank you in advance. Ella cleaned the hallways of a company where no one knew her name. In the eyes of many, she was just another face in the crowd. But behind the simple uniform and quiet steps was a woman who carried 9 languages and a story the whole world needed to hear. What happens when the highest echelons of a company discover the hidden talent of the most overlooked person in the building? This is the story of Camila Reyes, and it's going to touch your heart. Every day at 6:40 a.m., Camila Reyes would pass through the white marble reception area with a bucket in her hand and her hair tied back with a floral scarf. No one greeted her. The employees, coffee still steaming in their hands and cell phones to their ears, would simply step aside as if she were part of the furniture, invisible and silent. That Tuesday, one detail changed everything. A foreign visitor, lost and in a hurry, entered the main lobby. He spoke French with an African accent. He was looking for a meeting room on the 10th floor, but no one understood him. The receptionist smiled uncomfortably, typed something into her cell phone, and tried to use an automatic translator. The man grew impatient. It was then that Camila, kneeling by a trash can, looked up. Excusez-moi, monsieur. Vous cherchez la salle de réunion du conseil. C'est au 10 étage au fond du couloir à gauche. Excuse me, sir. You're looking for the board meeting room. It's on the 10th floor, at the end of the hallway, on the left. Silence fell like a thick curtain. The receptionist's eyes widened. The man thanked her with a broad smile and went on his way, now with confidence. Camila went back to her work as if nothing had happened, but someone was watching her. From the mezzanine, the newly appointed CEO of the company, Rodrigo Assis, had just arrived. Still with a folder in his hand and his jacket unbuttoned, he stopped halfway up the stairs and looked down. She spoke French, mumbling, more to herself than to the assistant accompanying him. Did she memorize a phrase? Something from an app? The assistant said, with barely concealed disdain. But Rodrigo didn't reply. His eyes followed Camila until she disappeared down the back hallway with the light steps of someone who already knew she wouldn't be heard. Camila Reyes was 44 years old and had eyes that seemed to hold entire pages of untold stories. She had arrived in that city with her young daughter by the hand and a degree in literature at the bottom of her backpack, earned with effort at a public university in Colombia. But there, her diplomas were worthless, her languages ignored. Only the company's gray uniform gave her any kind of identity, even if it was that of invisibility. She lived in a small, single-room apartment in a high-rise housing complex. She shared the bed with her teenage daughter, Clara, and used the kitchen as a study space on nights when her body allowed it. "Mom, are you going to teach again someday?" Clara would say with a smile she inherited from her grandmother. "Perhaps, darling, but in the meantime, we keep learning here," Camila would reply, pointing to a small notebook filled with words in 9 different languages. It was her most prized possession, a spiral notebook with a red plastic cover filled with handwritten translations, fragments of poetry, African proverbs, German grammar rules, and even sentences in Arabic. In it, Camila mixed the languages of the world with her mother's recipes and her father's advice. "He used to say that the right word is like a key," she told Clara one night. "Sometimes you just need to say good morning in the right language for a door to open." Camila cleaned offices with the same care a librarian organizes books. Every object returned to its place with precision. Every out-of-place sheet was adjusted silently, but as the company's floors buzzed with meetings and spreadsheets, she listened, not out of curiosity, but because learning was all she had left. In the small earbuds hidden beneath the scarf covering her hair, she listened to podcasts in Italian, speeches in English, interviews in Russian. Sometimes she would pause and jot down a new word in her notebook, translating it carefully, like an artist drawing. And that was why that morning she perfectly understood what the French visitor was saying. It wasn't a miracle. It was memory. It was choice. It was resistance. The company headquarters occupied 3 floors of a glass building in the heart of the city's financial district. Right at the entrance, a phrase etched in stainless steel gleamed under the glass. "Excellence is our language." But Camila knew that was not a language for everyone. In the hallways, heels clicked with haste, suits were tailored, expensive watches gleamed discreetly. Time there wasn't measured in minutes, but in goals. Camila entered with her broom at 7 a.m. when the first employees were already at their stations. She passed by them unnoticed, even when she saw the same faces every day. The cleaning lady again in the elevator, a marketing manager once muttered, glancing at her watch. That slows us down, added a young man adjusting his tie. Camila simply retreated, took the stairs down one floor, and waited for the next elevator. There was one man in particular who made the atmosphere even more tense. Mr. Alvaro Duarte, the human resources director, was known for his polished smile and his cruel impatience with anyone who didn't fit the corporate mold. He noticed every detail: a misplaced rag, cleaning at an inappropriate hour, the scent of Camila's soap, even if it was just a generic brand. Mrs. Camila, he said one morning in front of two colleagues, in our company, we value professionalism, and that includes discretion. Please try not to interact with visitors. They come for business, not for cultural distractions. Camila clutched the notebook against her chest, as if protecting the last piece of herself. She didn't respond, just nodded slowly. Of course, sir, she murmured in a low, almost reverent tone. But inside, a phrase repeated in French, Ils ne savent pas ici. Ils parlent. They don't know who they're dealing with. On the upper floors, rumors were already circulating. The cleaning lady speaks French. They said it was just one phrase. She probably memorized it. I bet it's one of those stories to go viral on the internet. Camila pretended not to hear, but she heard every word, every tone, and stored it away. 2 days after the incident with the French visitor, Camila was called to reception by an employee in a different uniform. A new group was arriving for an important meeting, and the executive floor needed to be spotless. Make sure the 8th floor room is well prepared. There's an international diplomat coming, the employee said without even looking her in the eye. Camila went up with her supplies, as she always did. On the 8th floor, as she entered the boardroom, she saw that preparations were already underway, screens being adjusted, waiters organizing the table with mineral water and small plates. A man in a light suit was conversing with another in Arabic. She recognized the accent immediately. It was from Lebanon, familiar from the audio she listened to at home. Without thinking too much, she approached delicately and said, in fluent and respectful Arabic, Sabah al-Khair, al-Tamthil, al-Hukuma, al-Lubnaniya. Good morning. Do you represent the Lebanese government? The man stopped, surprised. His eyes lit up. Nam? Anta tadahadath al-Arabiya. Yes, you speak Arabic. Kalilan. Ana talabt lugatain min al-madrasa wa al-kutub. A little. I learned with books and recordings. It was then that the door opened abruptly. Alvaro Duarte, the human resources director, entered, accompanied by two coordinators. Seeing Camila conversing with the guest, he stopped short. Excuse me, he interrupted in a harsh tone. You shouldn't be here. Go back to your sector. The diplomat tried to intervene. Forgive me. She was helping me. I didn't know how. We have professional interpreters for that. Alvaro cut him off with a forced smile. Mrs. Camila is here only for cleaning. Camila's eyes didn't drop, but her voice faded. She picked up the rag she still held, gave a slight bow of her head, and left without responding. In the hallway, one of the waiters commented in a low voice, I think she understands diplomacy better than that director. Camila walked slowly down the stairs, more to catch her breath than out of fatigue. Upon reaching the ground floor, she took her notebook from her bag, went to the last page, and wrote a new word, interpreter, in 4 different languages, not out of irony, but for memory. Someday they would hear her with respect. The following Friday, the company received an international delegation. Investors from 3 different countries, Japan, Germany, and South Africa, were to participate in a round of negotiations with senior management. The tension on the upper floors was palpable. Rodrigo Assis, the CEO, though new to the role, knew what was at stake. Before the meeting began, one of the contracted translators reported that the Japanese interpreter had a flight issue, a contained panic. The operations director paced back and forth with his cell phone glued to his ear. Let's improvise, Rodrigo, Alvaro said nervously. We can use English as the base language. Rodrigo frowned, visibly annoyed. They've already made it clear they prefer to discuss sensitive matters in their original language. It was then that Camila discreetly passed by the support room, carrying a box of cleaning supplies. She overheard the fragmented phrases. The technically mispronounced Japanese of one of the assistants. She stopped, as if hesitating between continuing or doing something. She took a deep breath and gently knocked on the door without entering. With your permission, Mr. Rodrigo? I'm sorry. Perhaps I can help, only if it's really necessary. Alvaro let out a dry laugh. This isn't a dubbing test, madam. We're dealing with multi-million-dollar contracts. Rodrigo looked at her calmly. Do you speak Japanese, Camila? I read and hear it more fluently than I speak it, but I understand formal structures well. I studied it for a while. I can try to translate what they're saying if you permit me. Rodrigo hesitated for a second. Then he gestured for her to enter. We have 5 minutes. We'll listen to you. The table was arranged with a degree of distrust. Camila approached discreetly, took the document one of the Japanese executives held, and began to read in a low voice. Then she translated each point clearly and precisely, pausing at the technical expressions. This term, co-equity yugo, refers to a strategic merger with mutual commercial benefit. The Japanese gentleman, surprised, inclined his head respectfully, looked at Camila, and said, Anata wa doko de Nihongo o manabimashitaka? Where did you learn Japanese? She smiled. Watashi wa kodomo no toki kara, toshokan to ongaku kara. From childhood, from libraries and music, the silence that fell over the room was not of discomfort, but of respect. Rodrigo looked at the others and said, It seems we've found more than an interpreter. We've found someone who truly knows how to listen. Alvaro said nothing. For the first time, he had no prepared words to react. The image cuts to a modest house on the outskirts of Cali, Colombia. Light rain can be heard in the background, hitting the roof tiles. In a small room, a curly-haired girl tries to imitate strange sounds coming from a portable radio. The father, a thin man with calloused hands, enters and smiles. Another language today, my daughter. Japanese, Dad, but it's very difficult. It sounds like music and math at the same time. He sits beside her and hands her a well-used blue-covered notebook. Write in your own way. If you make a mistake, repeat. If you get tired, rest. But don't give up. Why? Because every new word is a window, and one day, someone will need you to open one that no one else can reach. She smiles. Her father kisses her on the forehead and leaves. The girl returns to writing with the care of someone who knows they are building an invisible path. Cut to a night class. Camila, now an adult, is in a simple classroom. The teacher writes simultaneous interpretation, technique, and empathy on the blackboard. Camila jots it down eagerly. The interpreter is not just a bridge, the teacher says. They are the first to understand that all voices matter. Back to the present. Camila closes her eyes for a moment in the company's boardroom, as if she could still hear her father's voice mingling with her teachers, her daughters, the voices of the whole world that she always heard without being heard. Now it was different. Now all eyes were on her. The following Monday, CEO Rodrigo called an extraordinary meeting in the company's main auditorium. Rumors spread like wildfire. Directors, managers, and coordinators took their seats, some impatient, others simply curious. Camila was called by him before it began. She was in the changing room, changing her clothes when she heard him. Camila, could you accompany me, please? She was still wearing the gray uniform, but Rodrigo gestured with his hand. As you are, that's how I want you to go. The auditorium fell silent as they entered together. Camila walked beside the CEO, her gaze steady but not defiant. She was simply there, whole. Rodrigo took the floor. The reason for this meeting is simple. In recent days, a collaborator, whom many here didn't even know by name, has shown us what real value means. Not the value of a title or a printed resume, but the value carried in silence with constancy. He paused, looked at Camila, then at the audience. Camila Reyes speaks 9 languages. She taught herself with used books and old recordings. She saved an international negotiation with dignity when the official structure failed. A murmur rippled through the room. Alvaro, seated in the front row, crossed his arms. With all due respect, Rodrigo, I don't think it's appropriate to put a cleaning employee in a position of international responsibility. What she did was improvise. Rodrigo took a deep breath. Alvaro, you were present when she was disrespected in the middle of her duty, and you stayed silent. We are not going to repeat that mistake. He turned back to Camila. Camila, could you help us with this contract? They handed her a technical document that had just arrived from the German subsidiary. She read it aloud, slowly and precisely translated it. Then she made an observation. This term, Haftungsbeschränkung, is more complex than limitation of liability. It refers to the exclusion of certain commercial risks in the context of merger clauses. A reverent silence fell over the auditorium, Rodrigo concluded. Competence doesn't shout, competence acts. From today, Camila assumes the role of intercultural communication consultant for this company. Director Alvaro lowered his gaze. One or two employees who had previously seemed skeptical began to applaud. Little by little, the auditorium rose in an ovation that was not formal. It was something rarer, genuine respect. Camila didn't cry, but her eyes shone with an ancient light, the same as the girl who studied difficult words by the dim light of a borrowed lamp. Camila's appointment as intercultural communication consultant resonated far beyond the building. Within days, other departments began requesting her participation in meetings, contract analyses, and training sessions on linguistic and cultural diversity. Rodrigo ordered a new badge to be issued. Instead of General Services, it now read Camila Reyes, Intercultural Consultant. Director Alvaro Duarte, who had previously belittled her presence, was summoned to a meeting with the Administrative Council. The company was reevaluating its management team after receiving internal reports of discrimination and inappropriate conduct. The following Monday, Rodrigo entered the management office with a folder in his hands. We have formally received 3 complaints of discriminatory conduct linked to the Human Resources Department. They will be forwarded for legal investigation. Alvaro, in the meantime, you will be temporarily removed from your duties. Alvaro attempted to defend himself, but his voice sounded weak. This is an overreach, Rodrigo. Truly, we are making administrative decisions based on personal sympathies. Rodrigo did not raise his voice. No, we are making them based on values, those that are written at the company's entrance, but that few seemed willing to live by. The following week, a new internal program was launched. Languages That Liberate, a series of cultural workshops taught by Camila for employees at all levels. It was the first time the company auditorium had been filled without obligation. People who had never spoken a word to her now listened attentively. In the first class, Camila entered with a folded world map in her hands and a blue marker. She drew circles around common words in various languages: respect, listen, refuge. Words that change sound, but not meaning, she said, standing by the blackboard. We just need to relearn how to listen. At the end of the class, one of the employees, the same one who used to get annoyed seeing her in the elevator, approached her. Camila, do you have any material I can use to start with French? She handed him a copy of her own notebook with a note. Start with bonjour. The world comes after. Months later, Camila no longer wore a gray uniform. She wore simple clothes, but with a serene elegance. She walked the corridors with a badge that was no longer just an identification. It was a symbol. Everyone greeted her, some with a slight bow, others with a good morning in a language they had learned thanks to her. In the 8th floor boardroom, now renamed the Global Listening Room, Camila was finishing another workshop. On the blackboard, it was written in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. The most universal language is still dignity. At the end of the class, Clara, her daughter, entered discreetly and stood by the door. She wore her high school uniform, backpack slung over her shoulder. Camila saw her and smiled with her eyes. She finished her explanation and said goodbye to her colleagues. When they were alone, Camila approached her daughter and handed her something wrapped in a blue scarf. Clara opened it carefully. It was the red notebook. But Mom, this is your world, and now it's yours. You won't need it anymore. I've already opened the doors I had to open. Now you're the one who will walk through them. They hugged right there, without haste, like those who understand that there are moments that cannot be translated, only lived. On the wall, a recent photograph showed Camila in a circle of conversation with young company trainees. Beside her, a diverse group of attentive faces, some smiling, others taking notes. Above the image, a phrase that Rodrigo had personally engraved: "Who listens with respect speaks all languages." As they left the building, Camila and Clara passed by the reception. The guard, who had previously only nodded, said enthusiastically, "Bonjour, Madame Camila." She smiled. "Bonjour, Monsieur Paulo. Très bien." And they continued walking, without fanfare, but with the lightness of someone who no longer needs to prove anything, only to keep opening paths. How many Camilas pass by us every day, and we don't hear them? How many times has a foreign language seemed distant to us when, in reality, it was just someone trying to be understood in their humanity? Camila Reyes spoke 9 languages, but the most powerful of all was that of dignity. And it was that, without raising her voice, that completely transformed a company. Now imagine how many silent stories exist near you, in every uniform, in every accent, in every name that no one bothered to learn how to pronounce. And if Camila hadn't been heard by that CEO, and if he too had looked away, how many talents would still be forgotten in the corridors of indifference? If this story touched your heart, give this video a like. It helps more people discover stories that rescue what the world has tried to silence. And if you believe that knowledge, respect, and listening can transform realities, subscribe to the channel. Here, every week, stories like Camila's remind us that good doesn't make noise, but it leaves deep traces. Because when an invisible voice finally finds an ear, it speaks for the whole world.